Okay, family and friends, so while I'm sitting here prepping the vegetables for my vegetable soup, and I did put water in here to rinse these off as I go, and then I'll drain the water and add the vegetable juice. But anyway, so I'm gonna prep the vegetables first. But while I'm prepping the vegetables, I thought that we could have a chit chat. Another reason that I'm out here sometimes is because I suffer migraines, and especially during the winter. Well, if you're a migraine sufferer, you know that sound, oh my goodness, sound can send you over the edge. Well, you know, when you live in town, especially when I lived right there on Main Street, and you've got all the Main Street traffic, and then you have the traffic from the school, and you have the traffic or the sound from the railroad track, the trains. If I'm having a migraine day, I cannot stay in town. In fact, that's the reason I ended up out here so long the last time, is because I was having a migraine day. So I called John and I said, John, can you come get me? I said, my migraine is so bad that I cannot even drive. I was having one of those where I was having spots, floaters, and I knew that I was in no condition to drive. And I said, can you please come get me? I said, the noise here in town, I can't handle. And I love my neighbors, but the guy next door, he likes to play his music. And his music is not that loud, okay? But our wall between us is like paper thin. You can hear things, okay? And I mean, like, I have been over in his apartment when he's been playing his music, and when I'm over in his apartment and I'm on a good day, it's really not that loud. And but whenever I go in my apartment, I can still hear it. And one of the reasons is because he has it right against that interior wall. If I could somehow politely tell them to move that radio and that TV off of that interior wall that we share, I don't think I would hear it. But you know, it's their apartment, and they're allowed to put their TVs and their radios where they choose to put them. And like I said, it's really not that loud most of the time. And most of the time I can just ignore it. But that day I was having that migraine, and he was playing his favorite song, and it has this beat that just, it sounds like thumping. It's like thump, 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 you know, and it's a background beat to the music. And I was just like, oh God, I cannot handle this today. So I called John, and he was like, yeah, I can come get you. So he came into town, and he got me and brought me out to the Homestead. And I had one of those migraines that was like a 2-day migraine. And yes, I have medicine, but even with the medicine, it was like a 2-day migraine. Well, in those 2 days that I had that migraine here, we had the snowstorm and the ice storm. Hang on, guys, the phone's ringing. Okay, so then during the 2 days that I was out here trying to get over this migraine, because out here it is so quiet, and I can turn off the lights to my bedroom and it becomes super dark, which even if I turn the lights off in my apartment, it never becomes super dark. It just becomes like a grayish dark because of the light out by the Holy Rosary parking lot. Anyway, I can come here to my bedroom, I can shut the curtains, block out all the light, which is another factor that affects migraines. I can block out all the noise, and I can recover from a migraine so much easier and so much faster out here. But while I was out here recovering from that migraine, we had a snowstorm, and then we had ice, and then we had fog, and John just wasn't able to get me back into town. So I actually ended up staying out here a few days. But that was okay, because I got to feeling better, and then I start working on videos, and then I start working on photo albums, and the kids were having snow days, and John would go over and pick them up and bring them here so that they could spend some time with Grandma. And so I did okay out here for a few days. And then I went back up to my apartment and did not film anything up there. I just kind of hibernated. Basically, I sat in my recliner and binge watched some TV shows. And that's all I did. Well, I did a little bit of crocheting, did a little bit of adult coloring book, but yeah, didn't do enough to really be entertaining up there. So, but this weekend I'm back out here because I've got some projects that I want to work on, and I haven't heard anything yet, but a lot of times on the weekends, one or two or all three of the grandkids will want to spend the night. And so a lot of times on the weekends, I am out here. I'll come out Saturday morning and stay until Sunday evening. So, not all the time, but some of the time. Especially during the winter when there's nothing else going on. During the winter in my apartment, those 4 walls up there, well, actually, probably have more like 8 walls, but they really start to close in on me. So, and with my seasonal affective disorder, at least out here, like I don't want to, it's really funny. It's like during the winter, I don't want to be around people. But at the same time, I don't really want to be totally alone either, because oh my goodness, my thoughts can really go off rail. So by being out here, and I see John for part of the day, it kind of helps. And one of the reasons that it helps is because John is not a big talker. And you ask my sister, ask our kids, and they will tell you that John is a man of few words, okay? So like, if I come out, he'll fix me breakfast. We might talk a few words over breakfast, and then we kind of both just go our own ways and do our own things. And I like that. So it's like enough of John to kind of give me a little bit of conversation with someone, but not so much conversation that I have to talk too much. But I like talking to you guys, probably because you don't talk back. I'm sure you guys are going, okay, but we don't like all your talking. But see, the nice thing about that is that if you guys get tired of my talking, you can just turn me off. You know. Okay, which I hope you don't do. But I will tell you that in the winter, it is somewhat of a stretch to decide what kind of content to put up. But, you know, my channel, or this channel, is about homesteading. And, you know, one of the things that goes along with homesteading is fixing home-cooked meals, okay? So that's what I'm doing, is I'm fixing home-cooked meals. All right, so, let me think. Are there any other questions that I've been asked? So mostly it's about mine and John's relationship. So let me just summarize. John and I were married in 1986. We got divorced in 2000. So we were legally married for 14 years. Then we separated. Well, we've been separated since then, but I moved out with the kids and we left for a local town, but that was far enough away where they didn't see him all the time. Did that I actually lived in Honeywell, Missouri for 8 years, okay? And 3 of those 8 years, I wanted nothing to do with John. But then after 3 years, I started inviting him to like Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, parties, graduations, you know, all those things, so that we could do 1 instead of having to do 2. So anyway, so yeah, I lived in Honeywell for 8 years. Then the kids and I moved back in with John. We were still divorced, but we did move back in with him for a while. And then when Katie left for college, I moved back out, okay? And well, actually, John asked me to move out, and I did. And I moved in. I didn't have a place to move to, so I moved in with my brother for a year and a half. Well, not quite a year and a half, but then I got into the senior housing apartment and have lived up there since 2019. Okay, so 1986 to 2000, John and I were married 14 years. Divorced in 2000, moved to Honeywell. lived in Honeywell until 2008. During those years, John and I lived separately, and I mean, we lived separately, we acted separately, you know, and but of those 8 years, 3 of them were bad and the other 5 were okay. And we lived here for 10 years, from 2008 to 2018. And then after Katie had gone back to college, then John had asked me to move out again, which I did, because I mean, we were divorced. And so then in the year 2018, I lived with my brother because I had no place to go. I did find a trailer in Monroe City, but I couldn't keep up with the heating cost. And so even though I had the trailer, I still went to stay with my brother a lot. So anyway, during 2018, I lived with my brother, moved into the senior housing apartments in 2019. In March of 2019 is when I moved into the senior housing, and I've been living up there ever since. So there, that's my lifespan. And of course, you know, during those years that John and I were married, we had our 3 wonderful children, and they've all done wonderful things with their lives that I'm very proud of. Paul was in the Navy for 4 years, and now he does contracting work, still works with the armed forces, but in a contracting position. Karen is a teacher, and Katie is a social worker. So, you know, I'm very proud of all 3 of my children and the jobs that they have taken on for their lives. Karen is married and a mother. She's the only one that has children. Paul is married to a wonderful, wonderful young lady, Edna. They've been married, I think, 7 years now. No children yet. They're still trying. And then Katie has a friend in Columbia, Missouri, but she is not married yet and may not ever be married, and that's okay. We'll see. I'm not saying she won't, but I'm not saying she has to be. And but she does not have any children yet, which is fine. So I'm very proud of all 3 of my children and the lives that they have chosen. And then, of course, I have 3 beautiful grandchildren, which you guys see in some of my videos. One of the reasons I cannot do daily videos or even weekly videos sometimes is because I babysit a lot, and I enjoy, I enjoy babysitting. Sometimes I ask to have them. Karen, I'm bored today. I don't have anything going on. Send me the grandkids, you know. So, and Karen and Matt are not super excited about having the kids on YouTube all the time. Every once in a while, they don't mind a clip here or there, but they don't want constant bombardment of them being taped, okay? And I ask permission before I tape them. And so like the other day when Jeffrey was out feeding the birds, you know, I mean, he's 9, you know, and he may not want to be videotaped. So, you know, I ask him ahead of time, hey, Grandma would like to make a video. Do you want to be in it? Sometimes they say yes, or they'll say a little bit, or I will if I don't have to talk, you know, or no, I don't want to be in a video today. And so I respect their wishes. You know, I do my best to follow through on whatever their rule is. Just like the other day, Jeffrey was like, I will be in your video, Grandma, but I get to throw a snowball at you. I was like, sounds like a deal to me. So a couple of different times he threw a snowball at me, which I didn't mind. So anyway, yeah, that's why I can't do daily videos. Sometimes I'm not even able to get around to weekly videos because it just depends on what I'm doing. And then sometimes you may not see a video on this channel, and that's because I'm traveling, and so my videos go onto my other channel. I have another channel called Kim's Country Corner Travels. Kim's Country Corner Homesteading, this channel, then Kim's Country Corner Travels, which is where I put my travel videos. So all right, so let's get busy dicing. See if I can think of any more questions I've been asked over my lifetime. Oh, okay, so here's something I get asked a lot, is about Paulo. I've had some people ask me about Paulo, my dog. Okay, first of all, let me explain his name. It's Paulo, okay? Paul, P-A-U-L, with an O on it. Paulo. Okay, I have a speech problem, so sometimes I may not say that as clearly as what it's supposed to be pronounced, but it's Paulo. All right, so the reason he's named Paulo is because I had been looking for a border collie forever. I love border collies, but I also like to just look at pictures of different dogs. So Hannibal has a humane society, and the Hannibal Humane Society has a Facebook page. So I go on their Facebook page a lot just to look at pictures of the dogs and the cats and the animals they have. And so one day I was on there and I saw this picture of what appeared to be a purebred border collie. And they had a number with his picture. So I called down to the Humane Society and I told them, I said, I am interested in the dog number such and such. And they said, oh, you mean Paul? And I said, I thought I heard them wrong, because most people don't name a dog Paul. So I said to them, what did you say its name was? And they said, Paul. And I was like, well, I cannot call it Paul. And they kind of laughed and they go, oh, really, why is that? And I said, well, because my son's name is Paul, and I'm not going to call my dog the same name as my son. And so the woman on the end, she goes, but he's down at the correction center being trained. The Bowling Green Correctional Center has this program. I wish I could think of what the name of it is. Once I find the name, I'll try to remember to put it on the screen. But anyway, what they do is the Humane Society will send a group of dogs down to live with the prisoners down there, and the prisoners socialize them, okay? And they're supposed to teach them simple skills like how to sit and how to lay and how to walk, and fetch, just simple basic skills. Although I don't know who Paulo's trainer was, but when I got Paulo, he did not know those skills, but that's okay. So anyway, I digress there again. So I told the lady, I said, yeah, I can't name him Paul. And she says, but he's at the correctional center and he's being trained using that name, and I know enough about dogs to know that once they're trained with a name, that's kind of the name you have to stay with. So I said, okay, well, that's all right. I said, what I'll do is I will call him Paulo because all he's going to hear is the beginning, okay? All that dog is going to hear is Paul, and by the time I get to Lo, the dog will have already known I was talking to him. So we both had a really good laugh about that. So anyway, so that's how Paul, the dog, got his name changed to Paulo. And so he was in training down there at the correctional center for 2 months, for 8 weeks. And then when he was finished with his training, I went down and picked him up and brought him home. And I actually got him the same year that Jeffrey was born. I got him in the spring of, I'm trying to think when Jeffrey was born, in the spring of 2014. Jeffrey was born in the fall of 2014, because Jeffrey's going to be 10 this year. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I'm like, where have the last 10 years gone? So anyway, both Paulo and Jeffrey are 10 this year. That's how I can keep track. I have special skills to keep track of things. And like I remember I got Paulo the same year as Jeffrey, so I keep track of their birthdays. The reason I can remember that the farm has been in our family, or in John's family, for 172 years is because John is 72 years old. And he was born in 1951. Well, the farm was bought by the Hancocks in 1851. So all I have to do is add 100 years to John's age to remember that. So I have little tricks. That's like in 2005, the first farmhouse that was out here, well, actually, I think it was the third by that time, but the farmhouse that was on this property burned down in 2005. And at that time, John and I were separated. I was living in Honeywell. He was living here at the farm. Well, but we had been out here visiting over Easter. That's when it burned down, was over Easter. And so John's house burned down in 2005. And at the same time, right before that, my house had flooded that winter, that January. Okay, so let me start over because this is getting confusing. So like for example, another thing that I have an easy time of remembering is 2005. And the reason for that is because in 2005, the kids and I were living in Honeywell. And while we were here visiting for Christmas, a pipe busted in my house and flooded the whole house. We had come down for the weekend so the kids could be down here at Christmas with their dad. And I was staying here too. And while we were down here staying with John, my house flooded. And that was in January of 2005. Well, then over Easter of 2005, we were back at the farm again visiting because it was Easter, and John's house caught fire. And so in 2005, his house burned down. So the reason I can remember that is because my saying at that point in time was, we're all still alive in 2005. Between the great flood of Honeywell and the fire of the farm, we were all still alive in 2005. However, that was also the year my mom died. And so later on in the year, I kind of had to remember that part. But that was also the year of Katrina. And the reason I remember that is because I was down visiting my mom. She was in a nursing home my mom was in a nursing home in California, Missouri. And I was down visiting her, and we were watching TV together. And she said to me, Kim Ray, I keep watching the news, and these people are wading in the water. Why are all of these people wading in that water? Why don't they get out of the water? I was like, Mom. And she was close to the end by then. She had cancer too, and it had gone to her brain by then. And so I said to her, Mom, we had a hurricane. They're in a hurricane zone, Hurricane Katrina. And so they're in the water because their homes are flooded. Their road is flooded. And she was like, oh, those poor people. And then she said, but what a beautiful name for a hurricane. Katrina, isn't that a pretty name, Kim Ray? And I was like, yes, Mom, that's a very pretty name. And it's sad that they had to give such a pretty name to a hurricane that caused so much destruction. But they go in alphabetical order, and I guess that's what they came up with. But anyway, so yeah, that's my story of 2005. And then I remember in 2010, Paul was out in San Diego in the Navy, and Karen was graduating high school and getting ready to go to college. And I told John, I said, if we're ever going to take these kids on a trip, this is the year we're going to have to get it done, because Karen's going to be graduating, and then in a couple of years Katie's going to be graduating, and who knows where Paul's going to be off to, because he was doing basic training out in San Diego. So John and I, we loaded up the two girls who were high schoolers at the time. Karen was a senior, Katie was a sophomore, and we made a 2-week trip. It was a long round circle trip out west, and I had planned out this whole route so that we could see as many things as we could see on the way out and on the way back. And he wanted to see his cousins in Cheyenne on the way out, so that dictated part of the trip. But so in 2010, we went all the way up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then down through Colorado and Utah. And anyway, we ended up in California, out in San Diego to see Paul. And then we came back through New Mexico, or Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and then into Missouri. So we got to see a lot of the West, and the girls got to see a lot of the West. And that was before I'd started any videotaping, although I do have a lot of pictures from that trip that I might put into like a slideshow one these days. But I can remember our trip to the West in 2010 because Karen was a senior. It was a great trip. We kind of nicknamed it our Denny's trip. So John likes big breakfasts, okay? John's one of those, you do not skip breakfast. And he has to have eggs and sausage and biscuits and coffee or toast, you know. I mean, he sticks to his normal breakfasts. He was raised on eggs and sausage and bacon, and you know, his mom fixed him every day, and then I did, and then he did, and so he's used to having his breakfast. So every morning we would try to find a Denny's. So from Missouri all the way out to California and back, we would stop, we would try to find a Denny's. So we almost nicknamed it our Denny's trip. It was kind of cool, actually, going to as many Denny's as we did and seeing how they were decorated from each state to state. So yeah, pretty cool trip. All right, so let's see, what other story can I tell? That was our 2010 trip. So if you go over to my Kim's Country Corner travel channel, you're gonna see trips on there that I've taken with my brother, trips that I've taken with John, and trips that I've taken with my sister. And my sister in 2021, she decided that she wanted to go RVing. Well, actually, I think it was a year before that. Yes, okay, so let me go back. In 2020, she decided that she wanted to start thinking about her future when she retired and how she wanted to go RVing, become a full-time RVer. So that spring, we tried out some RVs, and she took me along. Okay, so in 2020, we were on this trip, and that's when the pandemic hit. So she had gotten an email from the college saying that everything was going to online and how they were changing the curriculum and everything. So in 2020, she decided, okay, this is the year I'm retiring. So we were on this trip, I think it was in April. And she was like, okay, all I gotta do is get through the next 6 weeks of this, doing everything online. And of course, at that time, we didn't know how long the pandemic was gonna last and how long all of these new regulations were gonna be in effect. So on that trip, she told me, she said, Kim, I think I'm going to retire. And that was in 2020. Well, then in 2021, after she got in her RV, she invited me to go on a trip with her down to Texas. So in January, right after Christmas, in January and February of 2021, we went on a trip to Texas. I can't remember how long that trip was. I'm thinking 6 weeks. We went from north to south to Texas. We went from east to west of Texas. We saw every part of Texas. It was absolutely wonderful, and all those videos are on my other channel. Well, then in the fall of 2021, I turned 60. And so for my 60th birthday, she said, Kim, let's go to the Northeast. Let's do the USA Northeast trip that we've always talked about doing. You know, because she was a teacher, I was a teacher, and most of the time when teachers retire, they say, let's go to the Northeast, because you want to go to the Northeast in the fall. Well, teachers can't go to the Northeast in the fall because we're teaching, we're in school. So usually that's the first thing you want to do when you retire, is go someplace that you haven't seen before. So yeah, so she goes, for your birthday, I want to take you to the Northeast in the fall. And I was like, I'm all for that. So then, yeah, in part of September and October, we went up to Maine. Of course, we went through a lot of states to get up to Maine, and we saw a lot of things from Missouri to Maine. But the main goal of the trip was to go to Acadia, Maine. And so we did that. And then we came back, and we came back through Pennsylvania, and wonderful, wonderful trip. So right now I'm working on those videos, and they're over on my other channel, and I'm almost done with them. I think I have 3 videos to go. Yes, I know I'm a little late in getting them done, but I've had a lot of things happen in the last 2 years that I haven't been able to really work on videos. With my brother, with John, with myself, all different, having medical issues. Just have not had time to work on videos. So, but I'm getting around to them now, and better late than never. Well, actually, I had done the Texas videos. And videos take time. I mean, you know, you have to do all the editing, and then you have to upload, you know. And I had 2 major trips in 2021. And I was able to get the Texas ones done fairly fast, but then the Northeast ones just kind of fell by the wayside. But I'm finally getting them done too. All right, so I'm gonna continue to chop these veggies, and then whenever I get everything chopped up, I'll bring you back to show you how I mix everything together. So I'll be back.